I just wanted to go on the record to say that I have concerns about the process that we as a county are taking with changing these civil service rules. I understand, as much as anybody, that we're in the middle of staffing crisis in our camps and halls. We need to hold our probation officers accountable when they're not doing their jobs. It's not lost on me that we need to get our workers to show up to work. But I just feel deeply that we need to meet with labor first to discuss these proposed changes. I think that's the better route to give us an opportunity to get at the root of these problems in a way that is mutually respectful and potentially productive. And I know we're probably going to hear some counter to that. But I believe our probation union, first of all, I believe that they acknowledge that there is a need for a change. And they, I think, always want to be a part of the solution. They don't want to be seen as the problem. And I think we all agree that we have to change the culture at probation. But I'm concerned that just these civil service changes are not really going to get to the bottom of that culture problem. And I worry that implementing these changes just so it's easier to discipline officers without addressing the root problem will not actually get us out of the emergency we're in. And I just want to say, while the focus, I know, of these civil service rule changes are specifically to address, let's just call them what they are, badly behaving officers, I just want to take the time to acknowledge that there are a lot of amazing probation officers who show up every single day, who work every single day. I go out to Los Padrinos a lot, and I see them out there, whether I'm there in the daytime, the evening, the weekend. They're dedicated, they show up, they care about their profession, they care about the young people that are incarcerated. And I just believe, and I'd even be willing to sit at the table with you if that were were helpful, because I just want them to be a part of the solution. And I think changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game like this without meet and confer is just not upholding the values that I think we hold dear. So again, I know there's a whole other side to this on why we're doing that. We're using the emergency situation that we're in to kind of go around that process, but I can't support that. I don't think that's the right pathway forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Barger.
Thank you. And, I to your point, Supervisor Hahn, we did implement a declaration of emergency actually in December of 2024 as a result of some of the concerns surrounding Los Padrinos. And I will say this to the probation union. They have been nothing but an impediment as it relates to turning this department around. And whether it be our current probation director or priors, the common complaint is lack of ability to hold individuals accountable. And, the state is watching, and civil service, I think we need to have a discussion as it relates to civil service rules, which I think we've talked about at this board, not as it relates to probation, but in general, to make sure that, in fact, we are adequately protecting our workforce, but also protecting our workforce who work hard from individuals that take advantage of loopholes in our civil service code. So it goes both ways. And when I talk to probation officers, believe it or not, some of them support the changes because they see individuals who are not showing up to work who are not being held accountable. And yet we have no means to make that happen. This is definitely a drastic move, and I don't know where I fall on it right now. I want to hear from the public, but I also want to hear from our CEO, and I want to hear from Human Resources. Because at the end of the day, decisions we make are going to have a cascading effect on other labor partners. And that's why we received a letter from the CCU, because their concern is this the beginning of a movement toward declaring a state of emergency, which is something we've now recognized as the way to get around some of the requirements that otherwise are put into play. We do it with eviction moratorium. We've done it quite a few times. And so they have a right to be concerned. The CCU has a right to be questioning us and to express concerns about the actions that we're going to take today. But I would say this is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening as a result of a union that I know has changed. We've got new leadership, but a union that was part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I say that, and I'll say it, and I've said it privately, and I'll say it publicly. I have never encountered a union that has become the least effective union that I've worked with in my 40-plus years with this county. So I'm hoping that this new leadership will turn that around, because it's doing a disservice to the good men and women within the department that are members of this union that genuinely care about our youth and about the adults. We focus on the youth, but we also are overseeing adults that are coming out of our incarceral system and are part of our probation. So, I have questions for our county council and human resources, but also for the CEO. And my question to county council or human resources are both: how many classifications would be affected by these proposed changes? And if the changes are approved, how soon would they be implemented?
Thank you, Supervisor. My understanding is that there are 18 classifications that will be affected. And if you could repeat the second part of your question, I apologize.
Yeah, how soon would they be implemented if they were implemented?
Do you know the answer to that question?
Supervisor, good afternoon. Eduardo Montelongo with the Office of the County Council. They would be implemented come April 28th, 2026. That is because they are here before the board for introduction and adoption on April 28th.
Okay, and then to you, Joe, and then is someone here from probation? I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you first, and I'm going to ask Joe because you signed off on it. How confident are you that these changes will be meaningfully improve the staffing crisis? Because that's really, we're going nuclear right now on something that I want to make sure you all are confident. And I'm disappointed that administration's not here to defend what is a very significant decision being made by this board as it relates to labor and as it relates to civil service requirements.
Good morning. My name is Deanna Carlisle, and I'm the Departmental Human Resources Manager for Probation, which means that I oversee a number of units in carrying out our HR functions within the department. Some of those functions do include our performance management unit, as well as our employee relations unit. So the changes that are being proposed as part of an overall impact to the department, where we're trying to make changes across the board. We're trying to positively be able to address our challenges and move past them in an expeditious manner. There are a number of challenges, and I heard what you were saying about this specifically addressing. If we don't address everything together, we have the opportunity to fail. So all of these, including everything else that the department is doing to try and address our staffing crisis, are critical, each one of them. Each one will impact the effectiveness of anything else that we're trying to do.
So in answer to that question, knowing that the LA County Deputy Probation Union has a new officer, have you all met with the union prior to bringing this forward? Because I know in prior discussions, there was it was dead on arrival in terms of discussion. Have you reached out to the unions to talk to them about?
No, not yet.
Have anybody, Joe?
My understanding is we have met with the new officer of the probation union, but not on this specific issue.
So, Madam Chair, I don't know if the new president is here. If not, I think that I'm going to be disappointed because, I mean, this is significant. And again, my frustration is, and I'll say it again, I've never met a union that's become really more irrelevant as it relates to turning this department around, which is really too bad. Because when I started, this union was probably one of the strongest unions we worked with on the 8th floor. So with that, I look forward to hearing from the public. Go ahead, Joe.
Can I just correct that statement? Sorry, that 6 hands grabbed my shoulder. We have met with the probation union's council, not on this issue, but we have not met with the new officer yet. But not on this issue, but let me just, can I provide some additional context on this?
Joe, will you provide some additional context on
Yes, please. So this is a process that is driven by the emergency, and when I hear the comments from the board, we do care about the workforce. We also care about the youth, and we care about those who are under the supervision of the probation department. And the department mentioned this is one aspect of a suite of changes that we've been trying to make. So this is not the only thing that we're doing. However, it does relate to performance management, and it does relate to discipline, and that is definitely a cause for concern by the union, and I get it, and I understand that. In other areas where we have gone to the table to negotiate civil service rule changes around discipline and things like that, it has taken a very long time. I think our current process, we're in over a year with our general process for civil service rule changes. So that's number one. It takes a long time to meet and confer first and then implement changes. Number two is there will be a meet and confer, just not now, but under the law, when we have an emergency, we can adopt a policy, implement it. Our obligation is to immediately meet and confer at the earliest practical time on the impacts to labor.
But Joe, in response to that, I was told, and now I think you're contradicting or I misunderstood, that in fact, when the emergency is no longer in existence, similar to what we did with the vaccination or the vaccine mandate during COVID, that it goes away. But you're saying that the goal is to have this be a meet and confer and the changes be permanent outside.
The meet and confer is on the emergency policy implementation. When the emergency ends, those policies have to go away by law. Concurrently, we can initiate a meet and confer process with labor for permanent rule changes. That is what I mentioned. That is that lengthy process that we will do concurrently. But just to compartmentalize it, the emergency rules can go into effect now. We meet and confer on the impacts. When the emergency ends, they go away. If we haven't finished our meet and confer with labor on permanent changes, then it goes back to status quo.
So you talk about how it takes a long time, which means it doesn't happen. How is this going to change that root cause? I mean, if there are other areas outside of probation, and you're saying that it's like impossible to get anything through, are we going to do emergency executive orders all the time in order to circumvent what should be addressed root cause systemic?
I'm not aware of any other conditions like that in the probation department that has caused this board to declare an emergency on how we operate a department. You know, we've been at this for a very long time. I'm reminded of the early on in this process, we're talking 4 years ago now, we actually started with incentives. Mm-hmm. We had approved 20% bonuses for people just to show up and do the work, and we gave them double overtime. That yielded some incremental benefits, but those fell off. Then we tried a whole host of other things. In 2023, your board adopted this omnibus board letter providing all kinds of authorities for the probation chief to make changes that hasn't yielded enough operational productivity for us to be out of the crosshairs of the DOJ, to be out of the crosshairs of the BSEC. So this is the next step in that effort. Now it is, I forget what your term was, but it is an extraordinary step, but we think it's an important one to keep this momentum going, and it's part of a larger effort at probation. I would say we have DHR across the table, we have probation. They can speak better to the kinds of benefits they see with these changes.
I would like to hear from DHR on that, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Lisa Garrett. I do want to make one point from what Joe is saying. As you know, we've been talking about civil service reform for a very long time, and just trying to change some of the hiring civil service rules. We have been in negotiations. We were for almost 2 years, and so probation doesn't have that length of time to make these corrective actions. And so this is why the executive why this emergency ordinance is coming forward. I'm going to ask Rodney and also Deanna to talk about the enhancements, what these are going to help the probation department do in light of the circumstances we find ourselves in right now.
Good morning, Rodney Collins. Good afternoon, excuse me. Rodney Collins, Chief Deputy Director, Department of Human Resources. As we go through the various provisions here, specifically a few things that why we believe that this is going to help the process. If we look at the evidence piece, right, that's the very first section. One of the things that the department and I were discussing is that oftentimes in the probation department, we have youth who, once they leave the camp, after having given us statements, and that those statements, if they aren't able to appear in a hearing, oftentimes it means that that evidence potentially can't be used to make a finding of fact against some action or activity that occurred that we are trying to take action against. And so by changing at least the evidence part, that's the very first plus that we get out of it, is that we'll be able to utilize, and we'll take AB 218. If we had statements, for example, from those youth from years ago, and we were able to pull those out of a file, we would be able to use that today. But the way that the evidence piece works now, it's going to give us that opportunity to use the evidence later. In addition, probationary. I think extending the probationary period, and maybe probation can talk about this a bit more too. Extending the probationary period, there's a lot of training and activities that occur before the folks actually get on the job and start doing the work. And so what it'll allow is for consideration of both the probationary period where they are actually being trained, which can take some time, and it will also allow for consideration of when they're actually doing the work, such that if it is determined that there is not a good fit, that the department could move towards separation rather than the current time period. Review and appeals. As it relates to review and appeals, it will allow for the director of personnel, and some of this is consistent with the current rules. It'll allow for the director of personnel to hear certain parts of the appeals. It'll also prevent some form shopping, which is possible. In its current process, the current process will allow for not only a departmental grievance to take place that could take months to kind of go through, but it also allows them to then, after that fact, come to the director of personnel and seek redress for their claim. But here, what this will allow is for them to choose one form or the other. If they decide that they want to come to the director of personnel, to our appeals process, it will then prevent them from utilizing the grievance process that's subsumed within their MOUs. Also, as it relates to suspension, reduction, discharge, I think the biggest point here is that if we see from DHR's perspective that discipline is not being carried out in a way that is consistent with what we would expect to see across the county, it does give the Director of Personnel, Lisa Garrett, the opportunity to step in and to work with that department or to even effectuate discipline in those cases.
And one last question for probation on the HR side. How many individuals are currently out on, medical leave on workers' comp?
So we have, as of yesterday, about 300 out on personal medical leave, meaning that they could have exhausted 4850 at this point, and about 100 out on 4850. We also have a number of staff who are currently on light duty, so they're not able to perform the full function scope of their responsibilities.
No, well, I don't think it's going to change it, but I'm just curious to know, I mean, we're going to be changing civil service, but I want to know what we're doing internally, because I know there has been a period of time where we haven't really even bothered to find out why they're not back at work or done anything as it relates to workman's comp. So I just want to find out if we've corrected that and in fact are being as aggressive on that side as we are on civil service side. I don't know if that be for Lisa or you.
Maybe both.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have heard those stories, and I've been with probation now for 11 years. My background is in leave management. This was a very urgent area for me personally, as well as professionally in the department. We have been partnered with DHR for, years effectively, and they've been actually stepped in and took over management of our processes to make sure that everything is moving as expeditiously as possible. We know where every one of our employees is. I can tell you that factually. I know that wasn't the case maybe 15 years ago. We know where every employee is. We are diligently following up with them to get updates from their doctors, to get updates on their medical condition, to do everything within our power to bring them back to work.
Supervisors, one thing DHR has done is we assisted the department in standing up a third-party administrator, which is called Sedgwick. And this third-party administrator now collects all of the leave documents from the employees and helps manage the leaves and make sure that the employees return their documents on time, et cetera. And so that's another layer of assistance with the leave management. And that frees up the employees to actually do the work of leave management, contacting the employees, seeing those who may be eligible for retirement leaves. And we have actually been very, I should say, successful in some of those individuals moving off these items to free them up for other employees within the department to take. So I can say that the leave management process is better since we have started with adding Sedgwick in, and I believe that was in September of last year, and we're still refining the process with the department.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's move on. Supervisor Mitchell?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying I am crystal clear about the origin and the importance of civil service and civil service protections. Without it, government wouldn't have, frankly, the diverse workforce that it does. It provides protections for women and people of color and all those who have been locked out for years of various work sites. And I am clear that we have faced an uphill battle for years when it comes to adequate staffing in our halls and camps. And I appreciate that the issue has gotten better incrementally over time, and I am also clear that there is still room for improvement. For the probation employees who show up to work every day, who bring dignity and commitment to your profession of choice, you should not interpret these temporary changes as a reflection on your integrity. You simply should not. The call-outs and staffing shortages leave critical needs unmet and put our most vulnerable at risk. We need, it's clear, multiple tools in our toolkit to address the BSCC and DOJ concerns. We have been at risk of having to close facilities. And what has been the common, most challenging thing to get across is staffing, period. We cannot, as a board, be hypocritical when I have lost count of the number of times we have asked for more programming, and we are told the staffing shortage complicates that. I have lost track of the number of times we have ask about LACO and if kids are being taken to classrooms. We cannot continue to bring motions asking kids to have the privilege of hugging their mothers, all swimming, all the things that we do from this dais, and not address the core element that complicates those actions, and that is a consistent, well-trained staff who show up and perform their duties legally and appropriately as it comes to working with young people. This should not be seen as solely as a response to BSCC compliance or potential receivership. We haven't talked about that today. It also has to be viewed through the lens of AB 218, where we have gone to Sacramento to convince lawmakers that we have done all we can to take corrective actions. This is one example of said corrective action. We have a responsibility to ensure that staff caring for youth and staff providing care across the county are held accountable for their conduct. This action should not be interpreted by those who show up for work and do their job with dignity and professionalism as a reflection on their integrity. This means ensuring that the probation department has the tools it needs to appropriately manage sworn staff, and there is recourse for those who choose not to ensure that youth are safe and protected. It is temporary. It is a tool in our toolkit to try to improve working conditions for all, lived experiences of youth in their care. I appreciate conversations need to be had. I appreciate there's a process and that labor should be brought to the table, but fundamentally, BSCC is riding us, Department of Justice is riding us, parents are concerned about the experience of their students, and when I go to our facilities, I hear from staff who are there that day how they feel about their own colleagues not feeling protected by their own colleagues who don't show up. And so again, these are actions we can take to hold those accountable for their behavior who need to be held accountable. And I can say that unequivocally without compromising my commitment or my core belief in civil service protections. So I'll be supporting today's motion.
Supervisor Horvath?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely agree with Supervisor Mitchell. I think that this board declared a state of emergency for a reason, and acknowledging the very extreme and urgent circumstances we're in is, I think, at the heart of what this motion and what we're being asked to do is about. These ordinance amendments veer from our normal labor relations process of meet and confer, so I just want to start with a couple of questions that touch on some of what has been brought up already. For County Council, can you outline what the meet and confer process will be as it relates to these items? I know that it's now after the fact. That a meet and confer process would be after the fact, but will the board down the road choose to make these changes permanent? Is that what triggers the meet and confer, or help me understand in the context what meet and confer is required?
I will also defer to our CEO, but as he indicated earlier, so these are temporary changes being made under the declaration of emergency for probation that your board has declared. And so the meet and confer that will begin once this is adopted is for the temporary changes. Concurrently and in parallel, there will also be meet and confer for permanent changes. And I want to look over to my CEO just to make sure I got that accurate.
Yep, that's correct, Supervisor.
And is this the first time we've done that?
No, we have used the emergency exception that is authorized under state law during COVID when this board adopted a vaccine mandate. We implemented it immediately. We met and conferred on the impacts of that decision, and then when the COVID emergency ended, those rules also terminated.
Okay. This may be for our HR team, but anyone is open to answering. Can you walk us through the steps that we've taken in recent years to improve probation staffing challenges in an effort to get in compliance and provide a better environment for our youth and our staff?
Yes. We've done a number of incentives, process changes, policy. We've
Can you give me
implemented.
some examples of what that
Yes.
specifically means?
So for the last 2 years, I'll start with recruitment. For the last 2 years, we've been working with an external agency specifically to target and identify candidates that would be best suited for our work. We're starting to really reap the benefits of that. It's slow, but it is coming. All of the public sector agencies that we're aware of in law enforcement are struggling right now across the country with hiring and management of their hiring and recruitment process. But we are starting to see steady numbers coming in to our process with applications. And of those applications, we're starting to see better matches, meaning that less people are being dropped out after the application process because they meet the minimum qualifications, so they're able to move through. We've added enhancements as far as our processes to do that, our examination processes. We've made
Increased. Have we increased any? Provided any other incentives?
So we have tried a couple of different incentives. I believe the board approved. The CEO approved some hiring bonuses, and we are in discussion right now, is my understanding, on some additional hiring bonuses to try and bring people in. I believe there's other fiscal discussions underway to make sure that we are competitive. At least we're meeting, other agencies, similar agencies, and I'm not sure if maybe CEO can speak to any of those.
It's my understanding we've also adopted financial incentives for people who consistently show up to work and report to regular duty. These are things that we have implemented to address the urgent circumstances and the need that we have inside our facilities. Is that right?
We do there. So initially, we had the 20% bonus that was put in effect, I think, around 2022. That sunsetted, but I understand that there continue to be bonuses for people who log a certain number of hours. I don't know if it's a pay period or a month or a year, but there are some financial incentives for folks who are present a certain amount of time on their shifts. I'm looking back to probation to confirm that that's what I understand to be the case.
I believe those incentives have sunset at this time. I know that there are ongoing discussions about what the best incentives and motivations to bring people back to the office, but the ones you're talking about specifically, I believe those sunset in 24, 25.
And I don't have a compendium of all the things we've done, and
Yes, I know
Yeah.
that we asked for the department to be here in order
right.
to be able to
I
speak
I
to
wish
that, but they're
I
not.
wish they had a presence here to answer these questions.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is there have been a mix of continued attempts to stabilize the staffing going back now to 2020.
Yeah.
Since I started in
Yep.
the chief executive office role. So
And that's sort of my point in bringing this up. You wanted to speak, Director?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. I also wanted to mention that when DHR went over, we noticed that there were several people who were calling out and there was no repercussion behind that. And so our team went and worked with Deanna and also the supervisors of probation to find out who was actually calling out. And we actually prepared over 600 letters for individuals who were calling out. Since then, we have had our performance management team to work with probation on those cases. And Will, would you like to briefly state what we have done in that area of the call-outs and performance management?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, Supervisors. William Gomez, Senior Human Resources Manager, DHR. We can share with the supervisors that my unit worked closely with the department's performance management team to oversee and assist them with crafting corrective action notices, which include but are not limited to suspensions, separations, and even first-time probationary concerns. We've also worked with the performance management team and looking at cases involving leave management concerns, as mentioned earlier, where there could be corrective action measures that could be implemented based off of the information that we provided. That assistance continues, and we've also offered and are representing the department and will be representing the department in matters before the Civil Service Commission as well.
I think it's important to acknowledge all of that because what's before us today might sound extreme if you didn't have the context of the years of work that we've been doing to change the circumstances that we've been seeing. And we actually started with incentives for good behavior as opposed to consequences for bad behavior. So, and we've rewarded good behavior, and yet when that has been an incentive that this department has provided, it still has not substantially changed what we are seeing on a day-to-day basis in terms of routine behavior and people showing up to work. And so that's an ongoing concern, not only for our day-to-day operations and the impacts that we have seen from our state partners that have been mentioned, but it's also a concern given the cloud of scrutiny we are under because of AB 218. We know Los Padrinos was declared unsuitable for housing youth in 2024. That's about 18 months ago, October, and it remains unsuitable. A chief concern from our state agencies since I came to the board has been staffing. Barry J. Nydorf and Campus Kilpatrick have been forced to provide the BSCC with multiple corrective action plans to avoid the same result. The state is attempting to obtain a receivership, which Supervisor Mitchell mentioned, and our county is paying billions in dollars in response to allegations related to our probation department staff. This board declared an emergency, so we need to respond to it as such with emergency measures like the changes requested in this board letter. And while I support these proposed conditional changes, I also want to be clear that the changes are strictly limited to the probation department, to the duration of the current emergency declaration, and subject to meeting and conferring with impacted labor organizations as implemented. And County Council and CEO identified exactly how that will be done. So I also want to be equally clear, we are not proposing that these practices apply to other county labor unions. We are currently facing extraordinary circumstances that require extraordinary measures, so much so that this board declared a state of emergency. So the measures we're taking today apply to that department alone. But our challenge is providing appropriate care and safe environments for our justice-involved youth and the staff from all of our county departments that serve them. And we know that consequences and accountability need to be a part of that. I strongly believe we must keep working to address these issues, and if we give up, it is our youth and our staff who suffer. Accountability and corrective action are critical not only to protecting our youth and staff, but to attempting to restore public trust that has been lost with this department. And in my conversations in Sacramento regarding AB 218, they want to see corrective action. So I am frustrated that we need to even take these steps in the first place. But I remain committed to course correcting our youth justice system, and I too will be supporting.
Supervisor Hahn?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm as frustrated as anybody is, listening to 300, people who are not at work, another 100 that are not there for a specific reason. I hate hearing officers that would have a doctor's report that said it wasn't healthy for them to be around young people. I mean, they've been awful. I just don't see, and maybe one of you can tell me, which one of these civil service changes is going to help with the staffing crisis. It's, we're allowing the director of personnel to discipline a probation employee. We're increasing a period an employee can be put on an unpaid suspension. We're increasing probationary period from 12 to 24 months, so probation has more time to evaluate employees who are being investigated. We're allowing hearsay evidence to support a finding of fact during a discipline hearing. We're increasing the probation, we're allowing reviews and appeals to be funneled to DHR. I don't see one of these that will help us hire more people. this is about, I mean, I think we're trying to send a message. We're trying to up discipline. We're trying to, send a message that we're not going to take this anymore. We want you to be held accountable. None of these, in my opinion, address the emergency, which was the staffing crisis, which still exists. And I believe it will still exist after this. As you said, we're doing everything we can to hire more people. We were already doing that. Lisa, you and I, you've been in my office with the head of probation talking about how do we, shorten the time to hire somebody, who wants to go into this line of work. I would argue that some of these things we're doing today might de-incentivize somebody from wanting to come into this department. They might say, hey, do I want to come into a department that just goes around the rules and decides to make changes whenever they want? This is not about supporting necessarily the current staffers. I don't see any of this getting any of those 300 back anytime soon. I don't see which one of those addresses that. Again, it's the culture, it's the support we can give them. Many of our probation officers feel very unsupported by the current leadership in the department. And I don't think any of this goes to the heart of why we're in this crisis. And I don't think any of these will get us out of the staffing crisis. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but which one of these will help us hire more dedicated, qualified probation officers any quicker?
So, in answer to your question, when we're looking at the probationary period, those are critical periods for staff to become journey level employees, for staff to learn what they need to do. And we know as a department that we can do better. We have other programs that we're putting in place for mentoring, for training, for extending basically that training period to make sure that they understand the responsibilities. I believe that putting in an extension on that probationary period will allow us to continue that training and fairly evaluate someone all the way through that time period. So to speak to your question about any of these, this is more a retention.
How will any of these bring back the 300 or 400 who are calling out?
Right. Retention is critical too. It's a critical piece of recruitment. And having people feel that they're going to be safe, well-trained, and come into a well-organized agency is also critical in our recruitment efforts.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Barger?
Thank you. 218, that's a compelling argument. So my question to you is, knowing that 218 is linked to both probation and DCFS, are you looking at changes under DCFS as well with SEIUs?
Perhaps not in the same way, Supervisor. We have conducted an extensive analysis of DCFS as well. We had retained outside support to do that. And so we have a series of strategies that we're implementing at DCFS. We are not seeing the same level of staffing issues at DCFS. And so
But no, I'm tying to 218. I mean,
we are everywhere where we have historical vulnerabilities for AB 218. We are investing the time and energy to make those corrections. They're going to look a little different. DCFS is a very differently situated department, but yes, we are absolutely looking at DCFS to make sure that we do not replicate the issues of that we had primarily at McLaren. And I would just add also, with the closure of McLaren, we've seen the number of cases by time filed against us that relate to DCFS decline substantially. So that was a major part of our problems there.
Okay, because I mean, the 218, I definitely believe that reform is needed. And to your point, Supervisor Hahn, when you asked what of these is going to change the hiring, I think it's quality, and that's what you're looking. I mean, there's a difficulty in terms of, from what I understand, discharging employees based on the current requirements. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, that's accurate.
And so is this going to help as it relates to, I mean, Supervisor Hahn's right. I remember when I was told that there's an employee that is out because they can't be around children, I'm thinking, why are you in this line of profession? It's almost making a mockery out of not only probation, but the county. So is this going to help address those type of concerns?
Yes, I believe so. Again, one of the significant comments that we get from our applicants in the background process, they call and ask questions about the department. They are, just like any of us, able to tap into any news or information, and they ask questions about what is the department doing to make the employees want to be there. The employees want to fulfill this mission. And we believe that being able to address some of the problems, and as everyone here has stated, and I agree with wholeheartedly, we have great employees. We don't have just good employees, we have some great employees. And we want to support those employees, but we also don't want them to become disheartened when they look around and see things that are occurring that are not being addressed appropriately, that are not being nipped in the bud, so to speak, and being made clear that that is not who we are as a department, and that is not who we want to represent as employees. We want to represent the best, and we want to make sure that if somebody is not in the same frame of mind, that perhaps they find other employment.
And my question to you, Joe, is in terms of other labor partners that are concerned that this is going to impact them, what assurances can you give to this board that this is not opening up Pandora's box as it relates to circumventing meet and confer for our union partners?
It's an excellent question, and I appreciate it. And I do want to take a moment to address that. And I think historically, this is the second time that I can remember us doing something like this. So first of all, it's not frequent. Secondly, it is not my intention to work around the traditional meet and confer process other than in extraordinary conditions. And I think when you think about the probation department in particular, and this is time limited and it's limited to probation, it doesn't extend beyond probation. This is the culmination of years of effort to right-size the department staffing, to address absenteeism, to handle discipline quickly and effectively. So this is not the start of the race. We're already well into this marathon. So what I would say to the board is this is a very unique situation with a very difficult set of policies that we're trying to implement to make sure that our youth are protected, that we do right by AB 218, and that those, like Supervisor Mitchell said and the department said, those who are coming to work every day and working hard, there's some accountability for those who are not. So this is not something I'm, as a strategic move, intending to do, absent the extraordinary circumstances that we see presented today.
And I don't know if you can answer this question, but civil service, how many employees do you terminate a year? Guesstimate. Let me actually,
We can get that number for you.
well, I just want to know because one of the criticisms I hear from civil service, the commissioners, is that departments do not provide sufficient evidence to uphold a termination. And so I'm curious to know, I mean, Supervisor Hahn keeps saying, what is this going to do to help with recruitment? I'm more focused on what are we doing to ensure that we get quality employees that truly are dedicated to our youth, and especially when it comes to probation, youth, providing them with all the tools necessary to rehabilitate and live productive lives.
One thing I can say, Supervisor, is that the chief, one item that he wanted to do is to elevate the position of folks that actually do this work. And so before they were group night supervisors, now he is moving to have deputy probation officers in these in these positions. And this one act will help with moving people from one unit to another, from adult to juvenile with ease. And so they'll have one classification that can go anywhere. And so the elevated classification, I think, will actually help with retaining staff because they get more money and they have a higher level of skill sets when they're coming in. We also talked about they've done increased training for the individuals that are coming in to serve the probation department, and that will continue under the current chief. We will also continue with the performance management that we are doing now with individuals that who are not abiding by the civil service rules or the rules of the department. Joe had mentioned when we were in COVID, there was one particular department, and there may be a few, that were not requiring their employees to follow the COVID guidelines. And so having that authority in the director of personnel, we were able to enforce what was not being enforced by the department. And I believe this will be a good linchpin to make certain that those in the probation department that we are carrying out the performance management for those who just will not comply.
Thank you. And again, I just want to, again, for the record, because I'm hearing that other unions think that they're next for doing their jobs, and that is not the case. And well, they could be if we declare a state of emergency, but we cannot circumvent meet and confer other than when we declare a state of emergency. And Dawn, what is the threshold to declare a state of emergency?
Supervisor, so as has been discussed here, there are different factors that create emergency circumstances. It includes board-declared emergencies with regards to the facilities over probation. In this context, we mentioned the litigation that the department is currently going under. There's a receivership action out there that could put the department in receivership. They're out of compliance with regulatory requirements with regards to staffing. So it's a combination of all those factors that create the emergency circumstances that under state law, allow the county to issue this ordinance first, and then we can confer.
But it's pretty specific. It's not, I mean, we have to have specific guidelines in place in order to declare a state of emergency.
Correct.
I know I know that you feel that the requirements have been met based on what you just outlined, but I'm talking about for other departments.
Oh, yes. There would have to be a scenario where those.
Well, like with a fire, that's what I guess then what I would ask of county council is maybe to provide us with emergency 101 as it relates to what threshold needs to be met to declare a state of emergency, because it sounds to me it's not as arbitrary as I'm feeling it's sounding. Is it?
Typically, it's threats to life and safety, right? Yes. Typically, it's threat to life and safety is typically what we use to declare emergencies, and that's typically what we have used for the emergencies that you guys have just identified as other examples of emergencies.
I don't like that threshold. Sorry, Don. I think that's like 5150, danger to self or others, and you can define that based on who's doing the interpretation. So if that's what it is, I'm not comfortable with what we're doing today.
Supervisor, may I read the code section 1304 because it does set out what the emergencies are. For example, emergency exists when life, health, or property is in jeopardy. An emergency exists when the immediate employment of a current available applicant is imperative because of extreme recruitment difficulties. An emergency is also the work of a program of a county department when it will be impaired if the position is left vacant and the work cannot be deferred or reassigned. So those are specific emergencies and that have been used for 1304 and like, for example, the emergency hiring. So these are specific emergencies.
The threat, the declaration of emergency is what I indicated was the threat to life and safety. And here, the consideration that was made by this board was the risk and the safety to the youth. That was what was used by this board to declare this state of emergency over this department.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think there's been a lot of good discussion both ways. And my sense too is what real tool do we have to change the trajectory of where we really want to go? And this is, for me, at least a 12-year experience serving on the board. We've gone through different directors. We've tried to make changes there. And I understand all of that. But I have seen some changes, I have to say. Can they go faster? I would hope so. But I am a bit concerned with some of the criteria, I'll be honest with you. The one that gives me an upset stomach here is hearsay evidence. I don't, because that is something that is very critical. If someone can say and attest to something without formal, crucial evidence, I wouldn't want to be in that position myself. I just wondered why we can't put a pause and begin this meet and confer now and see where we are with this list that is before me. This asked me, sent a letter, all of us got it. But it's primarily what the reforms that the director, chief probation director, wants to carry out. What is going to hurt us if we take time out and meet and confer? Now.
Supervisor, that would be an alternative. I am not optimistic that it will result in anything quickly. That has been our experience. I mean, negotiating civil service rule changes is an intensive, detailed process, and so if your board decides to go the meet and confer route initially, I think it will not result in any immediate changes.
Well, can we put a timeline or whatever? Maybe you come back and, as we have done and gone through other collective bargaining agreements,
and they may not agree to all this, so that's part of the negotiation.
Well, that's what I would, okay, before I finish.
We have.
I just want to say I would like to know if they have had the opportunity to really look this through with us, or not us, but you seated at the table, and we have you're new, you're different, our leadership has changed, I think, and I would hope that there's an opportunity at least to talk about it, and then come back, and we can discuss when that comes back. I don't know if it's going to change everything. My hope is that it would, because reasonable minds sometimes can figure things out. If we need to get something done, we know that. We do have our pressures. That no one's going to take that away. Maybe 218 is there. Receivership is talked about. The SEC is upset with us. All of these things have not gone away, and we have made improvements. So I just want to know what else we can try to do here and get the buy-in of our labor partners, and see, because this is monumental. We're at a juncture where things are really changing, and I would hope that might be something that you'd consider.
Supervisor, earlier today, we received a letter from, this is the probation supervisors, and they've described our actions as illegal. They've said a couple of other things, though, that make me concerned that we can actually move forward individually with the probation department and implement these changes. One is a disparate treatment, equal protection concerns. What they're saying is that we can't apply these rules just to the probation department. They're arguing that we've breached the MOU. They're
speaking for them, or
I'm reading from their letter.
What your interpretation is?
I'm reading from their letter. And so I just want to caution the board. We can take that step. We can meet and confer with them. I've been told on a number of times, I ask, why is this taking so long? The answer I get back is, we cannot set a timeline for bargaining. That is something that the law does not allow. And so we are transitioning from a process where we can take action unilaterally, and I get the concerns, believe me, I get them, to a process that will be driven by the timelines at the table And our experience is that will take a long time.
Supervisor Barger?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I would ask that in the next 30 days, and because this is going to come back to the board,
Yeah.
that you discuss with the impacted labor what is going on and get their feedback with the knowledge that this board plans on taking action, but out of courtesy, we want them to be advised. That's not taking it off the table. That's just continuing it 30 days so that they have an opportunity to weigh in and better understand the implications. Because I hear you, and I know where you're going on that from a legal standpoint, but at the same time, I'm incredibly frustrated with this labor union. And they are making it tough for every other labor union in this county because, quite frankly, we're talking about doing things in good faith because we recognize what is facing us from Sacramento. So we're doing the workforce a favor to allow them to better understand the implications of this. But at the same time, make no mistake, this is being done because of, quite frankly, some employees that have taken total advantage, which was done years ago in negotiations, which is a whole nother issue as to how it came to be. But because of those negotiations years ago, you can drive a car through the loopholes as it relates to how we are rewarding bad behavior and not rewarding good behavior. And I think that we need to change that. But at the same time, I also share the concerns. But at the same time, 218 is looming over our head. So I think there's an opportunity in the next 30 days for them to understand what we are going to do and then bring it back to the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Supervisor Mitchell and then Supervisor Hahn.
I'm clear that colleagues are not comfortable taking action today, but 30 days doesn't sound to me like we're acting in the context of an emergency. And so would you be open to something shorter than 30 days? I mean, we declared an emergency, I thought, for a reason. And so delaying this action just doesn't feel very emergent to me.
Supervisor Hahn?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just don't think anything here will get us out of this staffing emergency, which was sort of at the crux of why we did it. And obviously, we all have the young people who are in our care at the foremost of our thoughts and concerns about this. But I don't see anything in these rule changes that gets us more staff. And I will say, I do like what you're saying, Madam Chair, about taking a pause. And I think we have new leadership on both sides. Joe is our new leader on this side. I believe 685 has new leadership. And I think what we really want is a better relationship with the union. And I can't imagine what the meet and confer would look like after we've imposed these rule changes. I can't imagine they're going to feel good about meet and confer as we have imposed these on them. And just, by the way, I agree, we need to get the union involved in these, but they're not going to agree to necessarily all of these, but that's what negotiations is about. That's what meet and confer. I just think we need a better relationship with labor. I do believe they are part of the solution. They are not just the problem. And I don't think instituting this, I know you disagree with me, Supervisor Barger. Yeah.
CEO?
Yeah, and I've spoken to this board about having a better relationship with labor, and I wholeheartedly support that. On the other hand, I don't want to be held hostage to a timeline that we lose control of. So I have an alternative proposal. You all could consider it. If your board takes action today, we would immediately initiate the meet and confer action. However, the next reading wouldn't come until or the 28th out. If there is progress in those discussions, I believe we can continue that, not do the second reading, and reach the agreement with labor directly. But that keeps us to a timeline. And to me, that's important because I have seen it in the past where we don't have, there's no accountability to a timeline. When we want to move quickly, it's difficult.
What are you talking in terms of days? What are we talking about? The timeline? Weeks? Yeah.
We would send the letter out today for the meet and confer.
And then,
Right,
and it just,
right. So that's my alternative proposal because I am concerned about a timeline, but I'm also supportive of having those discussions, and if they yield something that can become an alternative to what we're doing today, I'm supportive of bringing that forward as well.
And so just to be clear on timeline, the adoption has to be at a public hearing. So if there were any changes, that's what he means by we would kick the adoption date, but then that's kicking it a month because it has to be adopted at a public hearing.
How do we instigate the meet and confer?
We would do it. We would send them a letter.
We don't need to vote. We don't need to adopt anything for you to start doing that.
If you adopt something today, we would initiate the meet and confer on that action.
We would have to adopt these.
That would
Rules.
start the timeline. If you don't do that, we can still reach out to the meet and confer.
And it's just the first reading. You're not adopting anything. It's just the first reading. And so then they would move forward with immediate meet and confer. And we'd still keep the adoption date for April 28th.
I don't think the union will appreciate that. I think if we truly want to meet and confer, truly want to have a better relationship, you need to I feel like one of you said, and show them what we're talking about. Not adopt it and then meet and confer.
But you're not adopting it today. Today is just the first reading, which would but it's not adoption. That would just allow them to trigger moving forward with meet and confer.
the optic.
This is, I think, the in-between. That's to Joe's point, rather than waiting the 30 days, the first reading lets him know that this is moving forward. However, we are willing to meet and confer. And actually, it pains me because you're defending, I don't even know that they're here to defend themselves, which speaks volumes to the arrogance, quite frankly, of individuals within that union. And I'm being hardball because this is such a disservice to the relationship this board has had with labor. And this union has snubbed their nose time and time again at this board as it relates to what the crisis going on in probation. That speaks volumes to me, and I think that's what's gotten us here today. And I just feel, again, I'll say it. I said it to the head of the federation, and I will say it to the union, and I will say it to the public, because at the end of the day, we are trying to save a department that has an opportunity to truly do a job and a mission, especially that this board has been laser focused on. And here we are trying to make sure that we are able to hire and then hire quality individuals that are not going to get us into another AB 218 lawsuit. Yeah, well, be careful on the hearsay, because the hearsay is actually protecting the probation youth. So if a probation youth comes in and says that I was beaten up, and then and documents that in his hearsay and takes off, the department can still say, Susie was hit, but she's no longer here, and then that's
I'm not
the
arguing with
hearsay.
you. I don't think any of these help us hire more people and get us out of our staffing crisis.
No, but I hear you there, but it gets rid of the ones that are the problem. And for me, that is equally as important, given how much was it, $4 billion that we've spent so far on AB 218?
4.8 billion.
And then didn't we just recently, within the last year and a half, have a group of employees that were arranging fights according to the Times? Mm-hmm. Is that an affirmative yes?
Yes.
So I think that while we're focused on the hiring, I'm also focused on the firing. Understand, but I think this weeds it out too, and I think that was the goal.
Well, is there, what I would like to go back to is confer, come back. And that helps to frame, I think for me, where the union is. You have, it was just said, they have a new union. You've even shared that with me. I haven't even met the new person. So let's see what comes out of that and come back and talk to us about it individually if need be. And then we'll, if we have to resurrect, put things back, fine. But right now, I would feel more comfortable if that happened. Is there any?
So is that with the compromise position that's been suggested by the CEO, or is it continuing the entire item? And that would need a motion and a second on the motion to continue.
Continue, well, just take it off for now. Take it off for now. And then come back. Yeah, come back. Well, we could table it, but it's fine, table it, but come back with something.